Okay, it's 12:04.
David, good afternoon. During the game, they talked a great deal about, or some about, your relationship with Bill Parcells and how you had gone to him before the season because he was an expert at turning programs around, that kind of thing. Can you talk about how that impacted you, and also has he consulted with you any since then in any conversations that you may have reached out to him?
I text him every now and then after a game, just to say, hey, tough loss today, Coach, but we'll be all right, And he'll text back and says, you're right. But the reason I spent the day with him was, first of all, he recruited me out of high school. I played for him for 2 years when I was at Vanderbilt. And then once I got into coaching, he's always been someone that I talked to and consulted with about a lot of situations because he'd been in the league for so long. But the reason I spent a day with him, I went this summer, was simply because 3 times in the NFL he's taken franchises and turned them around. He's been the best in the history of doing that, 3 different teams. And I respect his ability as a coach and respect his, who he is as a person. And I called him up and asked, could I come up and talk to you about some things about how you went about it? And he said, sure. And went up and had a day with him, and I just kind of picked his brain. Now, while I was up there picking his brain, I had to go to the racetrack to the horses and watch his trainer because, he's up there. He's in Saratoga because of the horse racing, because he owns some horses. But I just found out when he was up there, he treats those horses just like he did players and coaching. So it was a good experience for me.
How much did it impact you, Dave? How much did it impact you?
Tremendous, because, he's the guy that's been the one that has turned 3 different teams around. The Giants, the Jets, the Patriots, took 2 of them to the Super Bowl. And, he's the guy that knows it. He knows it. He's been there and he's done it. The only one that has done it 3 different times at 3 different teams. And I happen to have a relationship with him. And he was gracious enough to let me come up. And, of course, when I came up, too, I kind of got flashbacks of when, he was coaching. Because, he treated everybody like crap, but he always treated you fair, So he did the same thing when I was up there this time, And to give you another little quick story about him, too, is that when I was being recruited by him, at that time in college, you could sign a letter of intent in December with a conference. But when you signed that letter with that conference, that conference got eliminated from anybody else in that conference couldn't recruit you, but every other conference could. And then at the end in February, there was another letter that you signed, which was a national letter of intent. And during that way, you could, people would still be recruiting you. So after I signed that letter of intent, I signed a letter of intent with somebody. I don't even remember who it was. But people, MTSU, exactly right, Aaron. And everybody else kept recruiting. So along the way, I actually committed to like 3 or 4 people, after I had already signed the letter of intent with Middle Tennessee. And so when he came in and started recruiting me, the thing was, when he convinced me to come, he'd also heard that I told Tennessee I was coming, I told Notre Dame I was coming, and I told his team I was coming. So he nicknamed me Double Cross. So he calls me Double Cross because it's Steel.
What piece of advice or did you take from him from that day about turning a program around that you've tried to incorporate here?
Well, do what you believe in. Do what you believe in. You are the leader. You have a plan. Implement your plan. Make sure everybody is on the same page with you with your plan. And he says, follow it through the end.
Where do you feel like you are with that here?
I think I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it. I'm staying the course. They all know in this building what my plan is, and we're staying the course, so we know it's a process, and I still feel like that we're on the same path right now with that.
What's the plan?
Well, the plan is a big plan. I can't give you all the information, Sarah.
When you looked at the pass protection, one thing we talked about last week was how good their pass rush is, the Titans. What did you see when you watched the tape of the offensive line and when they protected?
Well, one of the reasons our pass protection was pretty good, we had no sacks, so we only threw it 23 times. And we rushed the ball without Tyrod 31 times, which has a lot to do with that. The rushing yardage and per carry wasn't there, but the attempts were there, and that was important to be able to have those attempts. And when you do that, it takes the pressure off those guys. And when we did throw, most of the time it was off of a play action. And when Ty got a little pressure, he was able to get out and make some things happen on his run. And that was all with his feet. And that was all because of us being able to run the ball, attempt to run the ball.
Now that y'all have been able to end the skid, what do you think will be the biggest key to being able to continue success next week?
Well, Christy, the big thing yesterday was don't turn the ball over and continue to attempt to run the ball, but run it better. And that's the biggest key.
How much would it mean to beat the Jets and to win another game, a second straight game?
Hey, Brooks, it happens to be the Jets. The next team is the most important. You always want the win. You get the win. That's the thing, is to get the win. And, that's all we're thinking about right now.
You guys have cycled through in the secondary, searching for a fit. The way they played, Eric Murray in particular, what have you seen from him and the secondary and how they played? Consistency
and continuity with those guys back there. We haven't changed our defense from day one to now. We're playing it better. We've got the combination back there of guys that understand each other, that are playing together. And the big thing, what I've seen with them is that just eliminating the big play. We gave up a couple yesterday, one, and basically it happened because of a miscommunication. And that's been the biggest thing with us moving forward, especially coming off the bye, is the big thing was communicate. And basically when you've played with each other together, it's no different than when you're playing in the offensive line. Eventually, the same guys playing together, you have some continuity. We've got the same guys in the back end right now that have played for us for a couple of weeks, and they're communicating better. Although we had a big one yesterday with the big play that they got, that was a miscommunication, and that's the big thing. And Eric's been a part of that. And Eric's a veteran player. He's been around too. So those guys understand, and there's a communication thing there that they're getting done that keeps us from giving up those big plays.
Defensive end with John Grenard. Do you expect John to be able? He did practice last week. Was it close to he didn't make the trip and didn't play, but do you think he would be able to possibly play this week against the Jets?
We'll know more about it on Wednesday. We anticipate him being limited, but we'll kind of see where he is right now.
Jordan Jenkins and the injury he had. Do you think you'll have enough depth? Do you think you'll have to call up guys from practice squad? And do you expect to put Jordan on injured reserve? We're
not really sure yet how serious Jordan's injury is. I know he will probably be out for at least a couple of weeks. We're not for sure yet if he's going to have surgery. But it could be a couple of weeks with him. But no, we brought up Derek Rivers this past week. We've played 7 or 8 guys. Sometimes we've had 7 up and not 8, and we still have those 7 guys regardless of whether Jonathan or Jordan is ready to go. We'll just go with the guys that we got.
How valuable has the leadership of Tyrod been, especially, as losses piled up, and he came back and maybe didn't do as well as he wanted to, and then was able to bounce back?
Well, his leadership was even there, Christy, when he wasn't on the field with us. It was still there. But the good thing about that is that when he came back in the Miami game, the leadership was there. And I tell you this, although it wasn't a very good game for him, uncharacteristic of him, there was still a belief all the way to the end of that ball game that we'd have a chance to win it with him being there. And everybody felt it. Everybody felt it on the sideline. We felt it through the whole week of doing that preparations. And when he goes out and he does what he did yesterday and taking care of the football and doing his job, good things happen, and it goes all through the team, not just our offense, but with the entire team.
Yesterday, Kamu Grugier-Hill had one of his best games of the season, but can you just talk about how important he has been to this team throughout the season?
Well, she talked about leadership, Krista did earlier. Listen, he's one of those guys. He plays every snap. Not only does he play all the snaps, he plays on special teams for us, and he's a pro. He and Tyrod, he's kind of like our Tyrod on defense. With Kristen Kersey not being out, he stepped up and kind of taken that role, and he's done a heck of a job with it. And again, playing as much as he's playing and his leadership, like I said before, he does a great job.
David, entering the game yesterday, I think Brandon Cooks had 53 more targets than any other receiver. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like you guys spread the ball out a lot more yesterday, even though maybe some instances were. What went into being able to do that and the plans to spread things out again?
Well, it wasn't intentional for him to have all those receptions or targets and the other guys not have them, he was open a bunch of times when that was happening because of some things that we were doing. And now all of a sudden, he does get doubled. They are aware of where he's at. And now just the things that we've starting to do right now since the bye week, as far as with Tyrod being back, moving him around, some of the things that we're doing in the passing game and cutting the field in half is giving other guys an opportunity. And it happened yesterday where there was 4 or 5 guys that ended up touching that football simply because they got themselves open, the things that we had called, put them in a situation to make a play, and it got spread around a little bit more because of that.
We have so many guys up on any given day, and normally just we'll have the 3 tight ends. With Jordan, he had been active previously before. Why did that change, and do you expect him to play going forward this year for you at all?
Well, I expect him to play moving forward, but the decision happened simply because Pharaoh was back. Brevin had done a real good job for us, and we decided to only carry those 3 into the ball game. This past ball game, and he was the one that would be down, and it's a week-to-week thing.
How much Brevin Jordan
to prepare for a Jets team that's gone through so many quarterbacks this year? What's that process like?
It doesn't matter. It's whoever's back there, we play. We're going to play defense the same way. We kind of know those guys that whoever they do play. We know their background. We know what they've done, but basically we'll just pair them for their offensive football team, regardless of who the quarterback is back there.
With Brevin Jordan, I mean, his third, I guess, however many games. What have you seen from him? And you mentioned those tight ends to get a chance to see him. What is his role? And it seems like
he's growing. He's growing into that role. If you've noticed, he's getting a few targets where he's been one-on-one, and we've moved him outside. We feel like that's a good matchup because he's a very good athlete out there, and he does a really good job with routes, and he's got really good hands. And even when we got him inside, even in our run game, he's starting to improve there because of his strength. He's pretty versatile. We can do what we need to do with him, whether he's inside or outside. But he's getting better and better.
David, how much grief did Camus take for not scoring? How much will he continue to take for not scoring?
Well, the one thing I told him when we were watching it with the defensive staff this morning, when he caught the ball, he took off running. I knew then after he caught the ball, he was a defensive player. Because when he started running, the first thing he started doing is looking back to see who was chasing him. Offensive guys don't do that. We already know on offense that when you're running with the ball, there's somebody chasing you. So he got to running, and every time he looked back twice. People were gaining on him. And so I don't know that. I don't remember that quote, but Satchel Paige had that quote about, you don't ever want to look back, or to keep going forward, whatever it is. Well, had he not looked back a couple of times, I don't believe he would have scored, but he would have got a little bit further.
Really quick, you talked about Brevin Jordan. How has it been for you just to see the growth of this whole entire rookie class? Because it seemed like each week they're getting more snaps.
I'm glad you bring that up because we talked about that the other day too. That all of those guys that are our draft picks now that are playing for us right now has a role, and that role has increased, and those guys are getting better and better. We knew what we had when we drafted those guys, and now because of circumstances, whether it's injuries or guys just getting better, getting ready to play, those guys we feel good about the future of having those guys, and those guys now are starting to play for us, whether it's on offense, defense, or special teams. They're finding their niche, and they're doing a good job of that.
Lopez, what does he bring to the team?
Well, I tell you what, he's a nose tackle that he's one of those guys that will command and allow those linebackers to be able to do what they do right there. And he is so tough, Brooks. I mean, that guy is so tough. He plays 100 miles an hour all the time. He's learning. He's also learning too that sometimes it gets a little rough and tough in there, with those guys, because you usually have 2 guys blocking you. Normally when it's 1, you're okay, but all of a sudden 2 guys blocking. Guys blocking from the left, and then all of a sudden you think you're okay, and you go to the right, and another guy hit you. He's learning now about how to be a NFL nose guard and doing a good job of it.
DeMarcus Walker, what did you think of him? How did you think?
Well, he played well. He plays 100% all the time. He's always coming off the edge. He loves getting to the quarterback. He's got a nonstop motor. And he's doing a lot better job of playing his gap in the run game right now, which you got to be able to do when you play on the edge like he does, because there is a responsibility there also. But he's been playing well for us all year.
Yeah, Did y'all go back and look at y'all? I mean, I know you go back and look at the catch by Nico because the announcers thought he actually got an elbow down and could have been called in. In hindsight, how do you look at that now?
I mean, I'd have made the call again. I mean, I'd have threw it again. But we felt like, but after looking at it, the explanation they gave was that his knee actually touched the line. His elbow was fine, but his knee, when it first came down, actually touched the line, and that was what got it, overturned or not given us. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay.